I'm Andrea Goeglein, and welcome to this new series that I'm starting, just known as Conversations. That's all it is. The topics will change according to who we're having conversations with, but it is really my effort to bring young and old and not so old voices together on topics that matter to all of us. So today's is Politics Across the Ages, Part 1. And there will be a few other subjects, but for today, our focus is going to be why get involved in politics? And with me today is a young man who made that decision earlier than I could have ever imagined, because I am not the girl who wanted to get involved in politics. Victor Cree, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience and just to tell them what you would like them to know about you for the moment.
Sure thing. So my name is Victor. Currently, I'm a master's student at IUPUI. That's in Indianapolis, where I study public management. And basically, a program deals with understanding how the government works with nonprofits and the private sector to address public issues. Currently, I'm a fellow at our mayor's office here in Indianapolis. And so my first sort of interest in politics came when I was like a little kid, and I just happened to be watching a C-SPAN video one day and watching them sort of do like debate. And I sort of thought it was interesting because I was really into reading about history and government. Even though I didn't fully understand, it was just very interesting. It's like, wow, I can actually read these things now. And so kind of putting it together with like the C-SPAN video I watched kind of set me on a course to be more interested in history and politics as I grew up.
Okay, and so the applied psychologist in me. So what you just described, would you describe yourself as more introverted than extroverted, or the other way around?
So I would say originally it was introverted, but over time I became extroverted because I realized, me personally, I was thinking that, okay, I'm introverted, but I probably need to be extroverted. So one day I decided to you know what, I'm going to do the opposite of everything I did today and just be more like outspoken.
That's true. You know, that's an incredible attribute, because I would say that, being introverted, extroverted is not something you actually, it's an attribute of the way you process information, and that can be broadened, but not distinctly changed. However, you just gave the perfect example for politics and life in general. You can see something and know that you are one way, but decide, I think it would be to my benefit if I actually adjusted and do things within the scope of what you're trying to achieve to adjust enough to get something done. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. I was just looking at what are the outcomes that I want in, basically looking at the road and seeing that the outcome I want in life, maybe being an introvert, forever is not going to lead me to those outcomes.
Yeah, getting other people together and enlisting them to your cause. I think that's one of the biggest attributes of politics in general. And I will tell everyone that's listening that for me, politics is and was the last thing I ever cared to be involved in. I distinctly remember getting the right to vote at 18 years old and deciding that going to work that day and not going, figuring out how to get to the voting polls was far more beneficial to me. I have only done that once then, and I have never done it again because the outcome was not what I wanted. And I will tell you, that was a great first lesson. However, voting was as close to politics as I ever wanted to get. And I will say that the last 10 years, 20 really, but the last 10 years, things changed so much that I just made a decision that I may not like something, but if I don't bring the skills that I have to the situation, which are, how do you use language to get people to cooperate? Not how do you vote a certain party, but how do you get people to cooperate? How do you get communities that differ dramatically to at least be able to work together? So I still don't like politics 1 ounce better, but I feel an obligation at a different level. So that's me. Victor, I really want to understand. I'm telling you, when you just said that you were watching C-SPAN as a young person, I'm sitting here saying, not possible. Not possible. Do you have any recollection of what you were watching on C-SPAN?
It was some sort of a community debate, and it's not like so I would just say for the audience, no, I didn't like particularly like choose it over cartoons. I think it was just simply a matter of like that was the only channel or something at the time period, so I just kind of got stuck on it. Um, Whatever was, when cable kind of came in, like you have to like purchase like those little
Sure,
boxes or whatever, and
sure.
so it's basically simply like it was either that or static, and so I was like, okay, let me just check this out.
So you were young, and then you actually chose, from what you said in the opening, to pursue an education in this. So it really clicked for you. Tell me and tell our listeners, why did it click? Why did politics click at a young age?
So I'm not sure exactly what the magic was. So sort of after that experience of like C-SPAN and kind of like my early experience, like reading books and kind of understanding to some small degree about, okay, these people have to do something about our government and something about representing whatever that means. And then later on, when I think it's sort of when Google kind of came out and became very popular
Okay.
into our middle school, I was like, okay, I know these people and what they do, but how do you do this? And so I remember sort of being in class one day, went to Google, do our like recess time or free time, and I just typed in Bill Clinton because he was like the most popular, politician at the time period. From that I could remember at that age, and I was
Right.
like, okay, what did he do? What did he go to school for? And so I just typed in like information about Bill Clinton, and it said poli sci, and I said okay, and then kind of going through the Wikipedia rabbit hole, and I was like, okay, so I guess this is what politicians or people who want to do what I could kind of understand was political science was at the time period. They
Right.
must go to school to study. And so from there, I began to kind of like research on my own and figure out, okay, what is this poli sci field? How do I become part of it? What do I need to do in life to be part of this field?
Okay. So I don't know what poli sci is. Tell me what poli sci is.
So poli sci is basically just understanding the relationship between, government and things that are outside of the formal aspects of government, but that are in relation to politics or related to government. So we think of like campaigning as a form of politics, and also voting is a form of politics. So basically, anything that has to deal with the connection between the citizen and government can be a politics to some degree, and deal with poli sci because we usually study those trends. So you may study how maybe certain demographics may do one thing that affects politicians or some policy, or how policy affects certain types of groups. So basically, it's the science of understanding that interaction between citizens and government.
Okay. So you get the interest in a subject. You were 12 years old, 14 years old, about?
Yeah. Well,
Amazing.
go ahead.
Amazing. That's all I have to say is amazing. When I think of all the things I was doing at 12 or 14 years old, nope, politics was not part of any of that. And you then began, you mentioned Bill Clinton. We know what party he's associated with. Did you then start to follow parties? How did that evolve for you? How did your thinking evolve?
So I did not follow parties at the moment. I would say basically just for my environment, it's mostly just so I live in Indianapolis, and Indianapolis is a pretty safe, dim area. And so most of my life has always been kind of involved around the Democratic Party. And so that
Okay.
was kind of the first party that I sort of like grew up with and didn't really know too much information about Republican Party. But over time and sort of going like to high school and college, I kind of began to open up, okay, there's other people out there who have different sort of fundamental beliefs about how we should run government and things like that.
I was one of those people, because when I went, that election I did not vote in at 18 years old was the election of Jimmy Carter, who I have come to admire as a human being beyond belief. But I assumed from what I was hearing in my house that I guess it was Ford that's who we ran against, right? And so that was my first time. I went to my mom and said, they want to know if I'm a Republican or a Democrat. What am I? Like I asked my mother, and my mother said, we're nothing. And then she listed who she voted for. And it was Goldwater and Nixon. And so I went, and looked up in an encyclopedia, pre-Google, what are those people? And I saw that they were Republicans, so I became a Republican. And therein lied my entire political interest, right at that moment. And so I am really intrigued that as a young person, you actually knew that you were surrounded by people who voted Democratic, because even when I reflect back on, like, politics was never discussed in our home. Religion was our core everything was based on our religion. And that would be a topic of conversation. Everything was, spoken about our ethnic background, which was Italian. Like, there were things that were very ingrained. Politics was nowhere to be found. The only thing I remembered learning early is you never want to pay taxes. Like, do everything in your power not to pay taxes. And that seemed reasonable to me. And so I went along with that for a long time. So I appreciate that you grew up in an environment where the conversation was actually started quite young.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I would say the two influences that kind of helped me to kind of be more aware of my surroundings was, so I would go to my grandmother's house a lot where she would watch news from, dawn to dusk.
Okay.
And also mother also gave me just a lot of, she really pushed me to start reading very early on. So basically I spent a lot of time in like the library and doing like a lot of personal reading. And so that kind of helped me to expand my mind and kind of understand things a little bit more around me. To a larger degree than a lot of my peers. And so that was kind of helped me to be more open to take in new information and kind of be more exploratory about sort of learning about the world around me.
So you said something, when I think about politics through the ages, you said something that really intrigued me. Clearly your friends weren't doing the same thing. How did you survive as a young person with an interest that your friends didn't have?
Oh, easy. Just never discuss it. Basically, just focus on the things that we had in common.
Do. That's how we got along. We just used to not discuss it. That's great. Oh my gosh, Victor, that's incredible.
Because even at the time period, even if we did discuss it, right, we couldn't really have like the sophisticated conversations or really thought-provoking conversations. All we could really kind of discuss at the time period, if we did discuss it, was more so talking points that we like hear from our parents or so. And
right.
So we would really never get intellectually anywhere. So we just kind of focused more on the things that we had in common, like, oh, did you see that cartoon last week, or did you see that show?
So now progress us. You started getting some education. What was your first real foray into what would be known as politics versus studying politics?
So I would say when I had, so I attended a college in Bloomington, Indiana. And so I remember one day I was like looking on the job website, or like they have like the student job website. Mm-hmm. And it was like listed campaign manager looking for like intern for our 9th congressional district. And I was like, okay, for me, I'm the kind of person that says like, okay, I read something in the book, I should probably go do it. And so I applied for it, and then I interviewed with the campaign manager, and they said, okay, you got it. And so basically I spent the entire that session, doing yard signs, doing door to door. So it was a really labor intensive work, but it really kind of got me to understand, okay, this is what it means to do politics. This is what it means to kind of be out in the field. Like all the stuff that you read in the books about, like, trend data and stuff like that. This is where it happens, where you talk to people and they tell you their thoughts.
Right. And I will say, in the last election series, I did the same thing. I actually got involved, and I was intrigued that all the campaign managers where we would go for meetings were all young people like yourself. And most of the volunteers were all old people, or let's say much older. We were definitely the AA and our AARP group. And I was intrigued how these young people were training us on what we needed to do, because trust me, I will never go knocking on doors again. I will write letters for the rest of my life to my neighbors and beg them to go vote, but I will not knock on doors ever again. But getting the experience and knowing that outside, like I grew up in New York City. I honestly don't remember anyone ever knocking on our door. Like you just don't randomly knock on doors in New York City, I don't think. At least no one to my knowledge did that. And it was kind of scary, but I was most intrigued with how phenomenal these 18 to 25-year-olds were at communicating to we not 18 to 25-year-olds about how to do this, how to engage people, why to do it. And it was part of what wanted me to have these conversations, because I feel that my generation has a lot to learn from those who actually are boots on the ground, getting involved in political causes. And, you have been just an exceptional person to have been exposed to, because you've been so methodical from such a young age. Right now, I know that you're working in the mayor's office. Is there anything there, like what's your next set of aspirations around your education and involvement?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'll finish my master's program next May. And so basically after that, I'm really interested in applying for USAID, which is our federal agency that deals with humanitarian aid to foreign countries to help them with like various programs. So that's something I'm interested in doing. And, for if some reason that doesn't go so well, I'm also interested in applying for our State Department's Foreign Service Officer program.
Okay.
So that's basically kind of being like, what you think of as like diplomat training. So starting off as like a junior officer and sort of working your way up. And then if not that, I have like a couple other things, so I always, like you just mentioned, try to be methodical. So I always try to have like the backup plans because, sometimes life happens, you never know what can happen.
Yep. Nope. I get that more than I wish that I did. I want us to close our conversation today, and I look forward to us having more of these, with one question to you. And it's about expectation, not what you hope, but what you expect from our great system going forward.
What I would expect from our system sort of going, and you mean sort of our system of governance, is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So I would expect from our system of governance sort of going forward is basically continue aspects of transparency, the pursuit of good governance, and overall sort of the expansion of political participation, because we're seeing like the trends of that continuously go down, and at some point we're going to need to recognize that we need to sort of reverse that aspect of the negative trend,
Sure.
because with low political participation, anything can happen in the future. So I would say those three things are the pillars I'm looking most forward to, because once you have those things, once you have those foundational things covered for our system, to sort of make sure that our democratic system is in place and in structure, everything else we can work on as as people, and have like those like policy debates. But the fundamental structure, you need that.
Great. Well, thank you, because my concern is that it's, I don't care how differing our policy views are going to be. What I do care about is that we are able to be in conversation to keep working towards the best policies possible, even if they aren't the policy I necessarily want in this moment. So with that, Victor, I want to close this conversation. And Victor Cree, thank you so much for taking the time today to do this. I am Andrea Goeglein. Serving Success is my company, and thank you for joining us today.